So what I'm here to talk about today is what is happening specifically in the role or in the space of power grids in India. Even today in India, 74% of our generation is coal-based, and we need to move towards renewable energy if we have to really decarbonize our grids. What that means is that with more renewable energy coming into the system, there is a very critical element that needs to be managed, which is the intermittent nature of renewable power. And for the grids, this is a very, very critical and important aspect. Now, at the same time, what is happening is, on one hand, we need to talk about generation, but on the other, we need to talk about demand. So what is happening on the aspect of demand is we have nearly reached 100% household electrification, which means that our grids have traveled thousands of kilometers to people across. And when I say people, they have also traveled to a lot of farms, they have also traveled to a lot of agriculture, industrial setups, small industries, etc., also on these lines. Now, from the previous year itself, the demand for electricity has gone up by almost 8.9%, which is way higher than any other developed nations that we can talk about today. So what is important then is essentially to see how energy efficiency and renewable energy systems can help in managing this demand. And second is, in order to be able to manage the demand, we need to really understand the demand better, do better demand analysis. And hence, in the role of, let's say, between generation and demand, there is one critical component that comes in, which is the utility or the DISCOM. So one is, of course, improving renewable energy generation. The second being increasing electrification. So why we talk about increasing electrification is essentially because it is easily, or rather more easily possible to green your grids than really start converting each and every end use to a renewable or a more cleaner source. Then comes the very critical aspect, which is essentially what I'm here to talk about, which is employing energy efficiency. So why are we talking about employing energy efficiency in decarbonizing the grids? So the first and the foremost thing is basically what energy efficiency will allow us to do is to help us reduce our demand. The moment we reduce our demand, especially in the peak times, is when our dependency on fossil fuels will go down. Secondarily, with this reduced demand, what it will also do is it will improve our overall process in terms of operation. Sorry for these too many breaks. So essentially improve operations in terms of, let's say, overall grid operations, and also improvements that we can expect across sectors. So efficiency does not apply to one particular sector and can be applied across different sectors. Thirdly, optimization of the generation sources. So once your demand goes down, there are two things that happen. One is it helps you to introduce, or rather reduce your dependency on fossil fuels, and it can also allow you to introduce renewable sources when you need power. And third, finally, is what all of this will together do is help in reduction of your infrastructure maintenance costs. So you don't have to upgrade your infrastructure every now and then to be able to meet the increasing demand. And then there is also, of course, carbon capture and storage, but I'm not going to delve into this more. So what we tried to do at Prayas was, we have been talking about energy efficiency. We've been saying energy efficiency is important. We've been saying it will help in decarbonization of the grid. We've been saying it will reduce the demand, etc. But there is no quantification that has been done till date on any of these grids. So we tried to do a case study for the state of Gujarat and for the power system of the state of Gujarat in 2030. There are a few things that we tried to do here. I'm going to talk in very brief and show you very quick results of the analysis that we are seeing from the study. So electricity demand in the state of Gujarat in the BAU scenario as projected by CEA says that their electricity demand is expected to grow by 2 times in 2030 in comparison to 2022, which is a huge jump. Now, the electricity generation in this state needs to keep pace with increase in demand. So what we tried to do was answer 2 questions. So we tried to see, can we increase the penetration of renewable energies, while we ensure that the variability or the constraints that renewable energies introduce are also being taken care of in 2030. The second thing that we try to understand is, can the demand in any way be managed to allow for more RE penetration into this grid? So essentially what we did was, we tried to quantify the benefits of using demand side management. Essentially demand side management is energy efficiency plus measures like demand shifting and also monitoring and metering to better extent in the state of Gujarat using a production cost simulation model. So we used the grid path model to really build this simulation, and we assumed that the energy share in Gujarat in 2030 will have about 50% of energy coming from renewables. So what we did essentially as a part of this exercise to really answer these questions is, we came up with a bottom-up demand estimation method to estimate the demand for residential, industrial and agricultural sectors, which are the most prominent sectors in the state of Gujarat, contributing to almost 70% of their demand in 2030. Here in each of these sectors, what we did then was, we improved the appliance efficiencies. So basically introducing energy efficiency across appliances, especially in the residential sector. We increased the motor efficiencies in the industries as well as the agricultural pump sets. And these acted as the key enablers to reduce the demand which we expect to come in from efficiency in 2030. Now what all of these efficiency elements did was, they helped in reducing the electricity demand for the state of Gujarat by almost 13% in 2030. Now this 13% reduction is, like I said, from the BAU as projected by CEA. Additionally, what we also tried to do was, we tried to shift the entire agricultural demand in the state to the daytime. What that allowed us to do was to essentially increase the penetration of solar power and reduce the dependency on coal or non-renewable fuels in the evening hours, when typically electricity is being supplied to agricultural connections in several states. And what this did was essentially also helped in reducing the peak demand in 2030 by almost 6%. Now I'm going to share some of the results from this exercise very quickly. So this is a representation of the sector-wise sales and the change that we see after introducing energy efficiency into the space. So basically if you just focus on the last two bars, what we see is that industrial consumption in particularly Gujarat has always been high, and it will continue to be high even in 2030. But just by introducing measures of improving motor efficiencies in industries, we have been able to reduce almost 7 to 8 BUs of electricity consumption in industry alone. Then comes another sector which is residential, and which is very, very key to this entire debate even in decarbonization, because with warming climates, especially in like states of Gujarat, where cooling demand is going to be increasing very significantly, introducing efficiency into the space of cooling, space cooling will reduce not just space cooling, also in terms of improving refrigeration, improving ceiling fan efficiencies. We were able to achieve a savings of almost about 9 BUs in the residential sector. Similarly, in the agricultural demand as well, we have been able to save about 12 BUs of electricity by introducing motor efficiencies. There are detailed calculations and assumptions on all of these which are available with us. A report based on these assumptions is going to be published very soon, and we can share that with all of you. But effectively, we see about 23 BUs of electricity saving that we could achieve just by introducing energy efficiency into this space. Secondly, this is another thing that I'd just like to share. This is more in terms of the grid operation and how it works. So this particular chart shows the load curve. So how will the demand actually look like when it goes to the grid? So the curve in yellow, if you see, or in orange, is the BAU curve without any agricultural shifting that we had suggested. And the two curves, one in blue and one in the colored sector-wise curves that you see, show even when you move agricultural demand to daytime, what it does is it typically allows to absorb more solar into the grid, as well as reduce the peak demand by almost 2000 megawatts. So these are some very interesting findings that we are seeing, and we are trying to do these studies for several other states. What this will do is it is trying to create that one number or debate to say what is the potential of energy efficiency that we are talking about in the grid, saying, and especially across different sectors. So the estimated benefits that we see for the grid from this overall exercise of demand shifting as well as energy efficiency is that there is almost a total, the savings in the total investment costs that go into the grid for 2030 will be reduced by almost 30,000 crores. And the power purchase cost itself will decrease from about 6.04 rupees to 5.84, so which is almost about a 0.40 paise benefit. The other thing that happens is coal-based generation is also reducing by about 7.9 BUs and effectively leading to avoided carbon emissions to almost 7.9 million tons carbon equivalent. The entire Ujala and the Smart Light National Program, which has been one of the pioneering energy efficiency programs itself, has contributed to around 5 MUs of electricity savings. So in comparison, a state like Gujarat in 2030, which is like 6 years from now, can contribute way more using energy efficiency. But what we realized in the process of this entire analysis was that monitoring systems are really key to understanding this demand better and make better demand estimations. So when we talk about decarbonization, there is one thing which cannot be avoided, and that is essentially going to be grid modernization. So when we talk about grid modernization, what that means is essentially bringing in smarter systems to be able to manage the grid more efficiently in order to allow for flexibility and integration of renewable energies, variable renewable energy into the grid. So what smart systems bring in is essentially smart meters and efficient grids. When I say efficient grids, is basically metered grids at all levels within the distribution network. And all of this will give us more, and all of this will also need better algorithms to manage those grids. And a lot of data analysis will also need to be done. So all of this together is necessary because granular data availability is key to be able to really work on better demand estimations, projections, and hence planning, and improve grid operations as well. So which will allow for more RE integration and really measure the benefits of energy efficiency measures that are being introduced. But what is happening today in the terms of, let's say, smart metering, so that is something that all of us have been hearing and have been knowing, is that smart metering, especially at the distribution level, which has been mandated to all DISCOMs, is that the distribution transformer and the feeder metering is still happening better in some DISCOMs. Why that is necessary is basically to get better information about the losses that are happening in the system. Secondly, consumer metering, which is in fact happening in lakhs that we're talking about, has been still focusing a lot on improved billing and collection efficiencies. But the challenges that let's say consumer metering bring in, for in example, in terms of, let's say, supply chain integration of procuring meters itself, AMI integration, that is the smart system integration along with existing DISCOM networks and systems. Probably my co-panelists here can talk a little bit more. Tata Power has been one of the, I would say, pioneers in really implementing the system and successfully implementing such a system. But it's not been happening with many other DISCOMs, and it has been a big contentious issue. And thirdly, I think the regulations that are necessary to ensure that consumers are not impacted by such systems, and the costs of employing, let's say, or making the grid or modernizing the grid or making the grid smart are not passed on to the consumers, are not in place in many of the states. So which creates more of a problem. So having said that, yes, we need data to be able to better understand our grids, better manage our demand, bring in more efficiency, but at the same time, how these systems are being implemented is also critical to be able to really utilize the data that these systems can collect and also use this data effectively for analysis and management. So I think I will stop there. Thanks.